What's up, guys? Derek, moreplates.com. Today is going to be a video on SEO, also known as site enhancement oil, or Synthol. It's kind of like the bodybuilding term that gets thrown around. I see all these like clickbait style videos to get views on YouTube about Synthol accident, Synthol man, like this, that, stuff about people who have botched Synthol experiments and stuff like that. What you guys need to understand is these guys you see on these like freak out bodybuilding disaster videos where they end up in the hospital with arms that are like ballooned out to here, and they have like no visible muscle in their frame to begin with, but they just have these giant like balloon arms. Like, this is not Synthol use. These are guys that basically have, obviously bodybuilders in general are extremely insecure. Like, this is the whole reason we bodybuild in the first place. These guys that you see in these extreme videos, these guys are so insecure about it that they'll just take gobs of oil and just shove it into body parts, hoping that it gets them, like so freaky that they just, are viewed as like the most jacked guy in the gym pretty much, or the room, or wherever you are. And these guys don't really, I guess it could be seen as impatience. And I'm sure some of it is for some of these guys, where it's like they don't want to build a foundation. They think they can just shove a bunch of oil in their arms and get like a 21-inch arm and overnight kind of thing. But I think a lot of it too is they just have this extreme nature where they just want to be the biggest, and this is how they think it's going to happen. And yeah, I think it comes down to impatience as well at the end of the day, because, maybe it's not working out otherwise. So they feel like they saw some, instant results from jabbing some oil into themselves. So now they're just like, they just go gung-ho and can't stop. And it's just like they want to get bigger and bigger, and they can't perceive that it looks ridiculous. But what you need to understand is Synthol use in bodybuilding is rampant. It's very common. It's not uncommon. When you see these guys in these disaster videos, those are the uncommon people that had horrendous results using not even Synthol. These guys, if you actually tried to buy like a private label brand, like Synthol or like painless pumps or any of that kind of stuff, the amount of money it would cost you to get the amount of oil these guys are jabbing into their arms and other body parts that are in these videos, you would never be able to afford it. And these guys aren't just taking, your standard run-of-the-mill Synthol products and jabbing it into themselves. These guys are literally taking like giant bottles of anything they can find and jabbing it into themselves. Like, I'm not kidding you. It's more, these disasters that you see are guys just taking hundreds of milliliters of like olive oil and just shoving it into muscle groups. It's not representative of Synthol use in bodybuilding. Synthol use in bodybuilding is jabbing oil. It's exactly what these guys are doing, but it's done in a calculated way typically to bring up a lagging body part. And that's how pro bodybuilders do it. And they mostly all get away with it. And no one really calls them out because it's unnoticeable. Because if you actually have a developed body part and then you pin it with some oil, you're not going to notice it until you get to the point where you're overspilling and you're throwing, you could have a bad shot obviously and get an infection and this and that, and then it's pretty obvious that you've done something. But getting to the point where you've like permanently deformed your arm, or like permanently deformed, like put so much in your chest that you have like a giant like bubble chest like these guys, you need thousands of milliliters of oil, and you're just never going to do that. There's a huge misconception. They think, you jab yourself with one shot of Synthol and then you ruin your physique. Like, it's a very, very obvious progression of ruining your physique. You'd have to be an idiot to let it happen, because it takes thousands of these shots to get to that point. It's not like you just jab yourself with one bottle and then, I guarantee you, if you went and bought a product, any Synthol product on the market, and you jabbed it into, don't do this, obviously, I'm just saying hypothetically, if somebody was to do this, and they put it all into a body part, or they put it distributed into a bunch of different body parts, you probably honestly barely see a difference. And that's just because your body's going to metabolize that sterile oil and just use it as, that's how it metabolizes, fats in the body and just like triglycerides and all the same stuff. Like that's just, you're literally pinning sterile oil. That's all that's happening here. So these guys, they just get to such a point where they've stretched their fascia out so much and they've stretched their muscle bellies out so much, there's just no coming back because there's thousands of milliliters of product in there. But the people who do it correctly, they're on stage all the time and you don't notice because that's how it's done. These guys will bring up, legging arms. They'll shove they'll do like a Synthol protocol and they'll put a bunch of oil in their arms. But it's like, if you have muscle to begin with and you do it correctly, no one's going to notice unless you have like a freak accident shot and you just like end up like Boston Lloyd or something where you hit like a nerve and then, his arm ballooned up and now he has a scar there or whatever. But it's like, otherwise, if he wasn't so public about everything, no one would know really what's going on. You know what I mean? Like if you see his biceps after he did all the Synthol stuff, it just looks like he has good arm genetics. You can't tell he jabbed a bunch of Synthol into it. You know what I mean? You wouldn't really accuse him of that. Otherwise, when you see Flex Wheeler, you don't think, oh, this guy just, uses a bunch of Synthol. He just has the most insane, like, bodybuilding genetics ever. And he does have the most insane bodybuilding genetics ever, but he still used Synthol. And he used acetylcholine, and so did all these other guys in the 90s, and people are still using Synthol to this day. It's a very commonplace thing, but it's, like, has such a negative perception on it that no one's going to talk about using it. But at the end of the day, even if you use gear, you're almost technically using Synthol because the literal hormone is suspended in oil and you're pinning the oil into yourself. So if you pin oil without hormone in it, then that's bad. But pinning gear with hormone in it is good. Like, you know what I mean? Like all Synthol is just sterile oil without hormones in it. And when you take gear, it's just sterile oil with active compound suspended in it. And that's the only difference. And then the only reason why the Synthol, does anything with a localized effect is because people are putting so much volume in that it's forcing the muscle to stretch out to accommodate that fluid that's being jabbed into it. You know what I mean? The exact same thing would happen with gear. And that's why when guys accuse Greg Valentino of abusing Synthol, I don't even think he was using Synthol. He was just jabbing way too much gear into himself and causing insane amounts of inflammation and then jabbing who knows what else into there. There's Synthol in that mixture of stuff probably, but it's like at the end of the day, it's all suspended in oil and it's just the Synthol. It's not like there's some special ingredient in it that makes it Synthol. Like if you've pinned gear before, you've technically, pinned oil, which is exactly what Synthol is. So does that make it the only thing that differentiates a Synthol abuser from what anyone else who's in bodybuilding is the fact that they're intentionally putting hundreds of milliliters into a body part to permanently stretch it out. You know what I mean? So just like a huge misconception I see, and all these guys are demonizing it and saying, oh, I never use that, blah, blah. And it's like, well, you pin your ass every week with oil. What's the difference? You know what I mean? If you pin enough gear into that glute, eventually there's going to be a localized effect. If you actually went out of your way to shove hundreds of milliliters of anything in there, it's going to, have to stretch out to accommodate that lack of space in the fascia. You know what I mean? It's the exact same thing. So these guys that are demonizing Synthol, it just really makes no sense because no one really understands what's going on here. And these Synthol freaks, they're not representative of what the point of it is. And the botched shots are typically infections that guys shouldn't have shown up on stage on show day, or it's because that's what causes that really ugly inflammation, gross, disease looking effect. And you see some guys still show up to shows when they have a bad shot of water-based something, and then they still show up with a massive infection, pus building and stuff like that. And that's just stupid. But it has nothing to do with the Synthol. You know what I mean? And like, sure, you could have an infection with Synthol, but it's more common for guys to get like these freak accidents with, you know, like short acting compounds, like, you know, suspensions and stuff like that they use pre-show. It's less common to get a freak accident occur with hormone free sterile oil. There's like a huge misconception about what it actually is, what the point of it is, what it's composed of to begin with. Like typically it's just like MCT oil, and it's just sterile oil, and it's like the same crap that your testosterone is in. So you're just pitting a lot more of it. Obviously I had the same sort of like perception when I was first getting into researching bodybuilding. I thought it was like this disgusting thing, and like, oh, it's not real muscle tissue and blah blah blah. At the end, realistically, if you're pinning a bunch of oil in there to stretch it out, it's your own muscle tissue that's being stretched. It's not like it's fake anything. Anything you do is temporary in the sport. You're not going to sustain a 268% physique until the day you die. Like, it's all temporary. Anyone who's like, oh, it's not real muscle, it's like, okay, well, is you know, your carb load that you did and like the GH you're on that's bloating you intramuscular like 5 pounds of water, and like the creatine you're getting from your red meat and like such and such, and all these things that compound together to create this illusion of like blown up, hydrated, good muscle bellies. That's all temporary stuff at the end of the day. The perception of it is just way off. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. If you liked it, hit the like button, subscribe, hit that notification bell if you want to stay up to date when I post new videos. Check out my blog, moreplates.com. Talk to you guys soon.